Myself, I am Vainitish Kumar from ITA section. My roll number is 21951A1250. My topic for English is successful business listening. Listening to listen is to give attention to sound or action. When listening, one is hearing what others are saying and trying to understand what it means. The act of listening involves complex affective, cognitive, and behavioral processes. Affective processes include the motivation to listen to others. Cognitive processes include attending to understanding, receiving, and interpreting content and relational messages. And behavioral processes include responding to others with verbal and non-verbal feedback. Listening is a skill for resolving problems. Poor listening can lead to misinterpretations, thus causing conflict or a dispute. Other causes can be excessive interruptions, inattention, hearing what you want to hear, mentally composing a response, and hearing a closed mind. Listening is also linked to memory. According to one study, during a speech, some background noises heard by listeners helped them recall some of the information by hearing it again. For example, when a person reads or does something else while listening to music, he or she can recall what that was when hearing the music again. Listening also functions rhetorically as a means of promoting the cross-cultural communicative discourses. Radcliffe built her argument upon two incidents in which individuals demonstrated a tendency to refuse the cross-cultural discourses. What is listening? Listening differs from obeying. A person who receives and understands information or an instruction and then choose not to comply with it or not to agree to it has listened to the speaker, even though the result is not what the speaker wanted. Listening begins by hearing a speaker producing the sound to be listened to. A semioticist, Roland Barthes, characterized the distinction between listening and hearing. Hearing is a psychological phenomenon. Listening is a psychological act. People are always hearing most of the time. Subconsciously, listening is done by choice. Is the interpretive action taken by someone in order to understand and potentially make sense of something one hears. How does one listen? In listening differs from obeying. A person who receives and understands information or an instruction and then chooses not to comply with it or not to agree to it has listened to the speaker even though the result is not what the speaker wanted. Listening begins by hearing a speaker producing the sound to be listened. A simultaneous Ronald first characterized the distinction between listening and hearing. Ronald, people are always hearing most of the time. Subconsciously, listening is done by choice. It is the interpretive action taken by someone in order to understand and potentially make sense of something one hears. Active listening. Active listening involves listening to whatever is being said, attempting to understand it. It can be described in a lot of ways. Active listening requires good listeners who are attentive, non-judgmental, non-interpreting. In an active listener analysis what the speaker is saying for hidden messages as well as meanings contained in the verbal communication. An active listener looks for non-verbal messages from the speaker in order to comprehend the full meaning of what is being said. In active listening, one must be willing to hear what is being said and try to understand the meaning of whatever has been said. Multiple benefits can accrue from active listening. Being an active listener enables one to become a more effective listener over time. It also strengthens one's leadership skills in the process. Active listening is an exchange between two or more individuals. If they are active listeners, the quality of the conversation will be better and clearer. Active listeners connect with each other on a deeper level in their conversations. Active listening can create a deeper, more positive relationship between or among individuals. Uh, the skills of active listening: ask open ended questions, request clarification, be attentive, summarize, paraphrase, reflect feelings, be attuned to feelings, ask probing questions. Active listening is important in bringing changes in the speaker's perspective. Clinical research and evidence show that active listening is a catalyst in one's personal growth, which enhances personality change and group development. People will more likely listen to themselves if someone else is allowing them to speak and get their messages across. Active listening allows for individuals to be present in a conversation. Listening is a key factor in cultivating relationships because the more we understand the other person, the more connection we create. I studied in nonviolent communication. Dharma teachings as someone recently started, we should listen harder than we speak. In language learning, along with speaking, reading, and writing, listening is one of the four skills of language learning. All language teaching approaches except for grammar translation incorporate a listening component. Some teaching methods such as total physical response involve students simply listening and responding. A distinction is often made between intensive listening, in which learners attempt to listen with the maximum accuracy to a relatively brief sequence of speech, and extensive listening, in which learners listen to lengthy passages for general comprehension. While intensive listening may be more effective for developing Specific aspects of listening ability. Extensive listening is more effective in building fluency and maintaining learner motivation. People are usually not conscious of how they listen in their first or native language unless they encounter difficulty. A research project focused on facilitating language make conscious use of auto strategies they unconsciously use in their first language, such as inferring selective attention or evaluation. Several factors are activated in speech perception: phonetic quality, prosodic patterns, passing, and speed of input, all of which influence the comprehensibility of listening input. There is a common store of semantic information in memory that is used in both first and second language speech comprehension, but research has found separate stores of phonological information for speech. Semantic knowledge required for language understanding is assessed through phonological tagging of whatever language is heard. In a study involving 93 participants investigating the relationship between sound language listening and a range of tasks, it was discovered that listening anxiety played a major factor as an obstacle against developing speed and experience in anxiety and comprehension are related, and as the investigators expected, they were negatively correlated. Rhetorical listening. Krista Ackloff contended that much of literacy teaching in the US emphasizes classical listening. These theories mainly focused on the rhetoric speech that can persuade in uh, the audience. Therefore, the goal of classical theoretic students was to address what the audience should listen for. The hearer listens in the divided logos while simultaneously produces the responses to the speaker. On the other side, within the restored logos, listener exploits the listening time on live in someone else's experiences, then reflect on and makes makings to offer a response. Different critical listening rectified invited language scholars to consider listening as a new tactic or to make meaning and hear the discursive discourses of gender and race, and importantly facilitate cross-cultural dialogue. Rectify defend rhetorical within the logos where listeners may employ their agency. To this end, Radcliffe argued that theoretical listening provides a stance of openness that a person may choose to assume in relation to any person, text, or culture. As an outcome of this openness, Radcliffe claimed that theoretical listening cultivates individuals' conscious and willingness in a way that promote the communication, especially the cross-cultural one. Practicing rhetorical listening in the classroom. Another strategy for teachers to practice theoretical rhetorical listening and improve culture sensitivity in the classroom is by applying practices from deaf studies. This kind of listening pathology requires students to be attentive and reduce distracting noises, share their story, including their culture background, so that classmates can be familiar with their perspective, to engage in critical dialogue in order to understand others and pay attention to their classmates' body language and message it sends. Business communication is the process of sharing information between employees within and outside a company. The way people communicate and operate within a business is very vital to the company's success in the business world. Communication in progress. Most of the time, the communication part within business is how employees talk with each other and how employees talk with their bosses. Being able to share ideas, concerns, problems, or even our own lives within our job is where the successes of communication comes in within the business world. In fact, research has shown that when business have effective communication amongst their employees, there is a 20% spike in productivity. It is how we can communicate with one another, and business not only need this from the employees but they expect it. They are growing emphasis is on employees to not just do their job but to contribute to business world. Managing negative news in a business, communicating negative news is unavoidable. One point or the other is had to be done. It may be about giving the employees some constructive feedbacks on their works or informing them that they are being laid down. It may have serious effect on them based on how you choose to deliver those messages. While communicating negative news, if possible, at first provide some good news, express gratitude, have agreement or understanding, and then discuss, explain the reasons that led to the decision. While communicating negative news, we must be non-judgmental and use non-discriminatory language. While doing so, we must be compassionate and fair to them. The next step is to explain the bad news clearly without overemphasizing it. Avoid using negative language and end the communication on a positive and friendly note. Thank you.